The gravel crunched under the tires like brittle bones snapping in the humid twilight, and Grandma's old Ford came to a halt on the shoulder of Highway 17, the engine ticking down into silence that echoed louder than any scream. "Get out, Riley. You're no granddaughter of mine anymore," she said, her voice a blade wrapped in magnolia silk, eyes fixed on the dashboard as if the ghosts of her own unspoken regrets were etched there. I clutched my duffel bag, the weight of it pulling at my 17-year-old shoulders, and stepped into the dusk, the door slamming shut behind me like the final page of a story I never asked to end, watching taillights bleed red into the Carolina lowcountry, leaving me with nothing but the salt-stung wind and the dawning truth that love could abandon you faster than fear. Shame. The word lodged in my throat like a fishbone, sharp and unyielding. Grandma Evelyn had raised me single-handed after Mama's death, her world a tapestry of church suppers, sweet tea on wraparound porches, and the unyielding grip of Southern Baptist doctrine. She was the oak in our garden, roots deep in the red clay of South Carolina, branches heavy with the weight of tradition. Daddy had vanished before I could walk, leaving her to stitch our lives together with thrift and prayer. I was her everything, her little firecracker, she called me, with my wild auburn curls and a laugh that chased the wrens from the eaves. But that evening, as cicadas hummed their dirge outside, everything shattered. She packed my bag that night, folding my clothes with the precision of a funeral rite, her lips pressed thin. "Pray on it, Riley. Find your way back to righteousness." By morning we were driving, the radio tuned low to gospel hymns that mocked my unraveling soul. The argument erupted near the state line, words flung like pebbles into a pond, me pleading for her love, her countering with verses from Leviticus, her voice cracking on the edges of her own buried sorrows. And then the stop. The expulsion. I stood there as the car pulled away, dust devils swirling at my feet, the vast palmetto sky pressing down like a judgment. A trucker eventually picked me up, his cab reeking of diesel and stale coffee, dropping me at a Greyhound station in Savannah where the fluorescent lights buzzed like angry hornets. Those first nights blurred into a haze of bus seats and borrowed mercy. I crashed on the floor of a women's shelter, the air thick with whispers of broken dreams, my body curled around the ache in my chest. Calls to old friends went unanswered, their parents' voices clipped with the same veiled disapproval Grandma had sown. I wired what little money I had from odd jobs, babysitting the summer before, to buy a ticket north, chasing whispers of a world that might claim me as its own. Portland, Oregon. The name had come from a dog-eared copy of a zine I'd found in a high school library, pages filled with stories of queer kids forging lives amid rain-soaked pines and coffee shops that doubled as sanctuaries. It felt like a prayer, that city, far from the humid embrace of the South, where secrets festered like Spanish moss. Portland welcomed me with sheets of rain that mirrored the tears I couldn't afford to shed. I was 18 by then, legal but adrift, renting a closet-sized room above a laundromat where the dryers thrummed like a mechanical heartbeat. Days bled into shifts at a diner called the Blue Heron, slinging hash browns to bleary-eyed artists and tech wanderers, my uniform stained with grease and unspoken grief. Nights, I wandered the Willamette River's banks, the water's murmur a balm to the silence Grandma's absence had carved. I wrote letters I never sent, pages of ink-stained fury and longing, folded into envelopes addressed to Bluffton, South Carolina. "I miss your okra fritters. I miss you." But the truth was sharper. I missed the girl I had been before the words, "I like girls," reshaped us both. Love found me tentatively like sunlight-piercing fog. There was Josie first, a tattooed barista with a septum piercing and a laugh like wind chimes, who slipped me free lattes and shared her twin bed in a southeast loft. We tangled in the sheets, her fingers tracing the freckles across my collarbone, whispering promises of forever that dissolved come morning. She taught me the city's pulse, the dyke marches in summer, the poetry slams where voices like mine weren't sins but symphonies. But Josie was a wildfire, bright and fleeting. She left for Seattle with a borrowed hoodie and a note that read, "You're too heavy for me, Riley. Lighten up." The abandonment stung, a smaller echo of the roadside, reminding me that trust was a fragile bloom, easily crushed. I hardened then, building walls from the bricks of self-preservation. Community college followed, classes in literature and women's studies that cracked open the cage of my isolation. Professor Harlan, with her silver-streaked bob and eyes like aged whiskey, Saw the hunger in me. The way I devoured Audre Lorde and Adrienne Rich, my notebooks filling with marginalia that bled my soul onto the page. Your voice is a river, Riley, she told me once, after office hours in her cluttered study overlooking the rose gardens. Don't let the droughts define its flow. Her words planted seeds, but the soil was still parched. The wound festered in solitude. Holidays amplified it. The diner's Thanksgiving rush, where families huddled over turkey plates, their laughter a knife twist. I imagined Grandma at her table, the one with the lace runner and mismatched china, her chair empty now, a ghost at the feast. Did she pray for me still? Or had I become the prodigal too profane to reclaim? Dreams haunted me, her Ford pulling over again, this time with arms open, but I'd wake to the rain pattering against my window, the city lights smearing like watercolor regrets. Yet in that dim room, amid the hum of the laundromat below, glimmers began to stir. A volunteer gig at a youth center for LGBTQ runaways, where I led art workshops, watching scared kids, mirrors of my younger self, unfurl their colors on canvas. One girl, barely 15 with braids like midnight rivers, handed me a drawing of a girl under a rainbow saying, "This is you, Miss Riley." Strong like the bridge over the river. The bridge. Portland's icon, steel spans arcing over the Willamette. Symbols of connection amid the flood. For the first time I felt the pull of something beyond survival. A thread weaving me back to the girl abandoned on that gravel shoulder, whispering that rebirth might not be a destination, but a dawn breaking slow. The breakdown came not in thunder, but in the quiet unraveling of threads I thought I'd mended, the kind that leaves you staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m., tracing cracks in the plaster like fault lines in your own resolve. It was my 22nd birthday, marked not with cake but a solitary pint of Ben & Jerry's on a fire escape overlooking Burnside Bridge, the Cherry Garcia melting into pink rivers down my chin as foghorns mourned from the harbor. Josie had been gone 6 months, her absence a hollow in my chest where laughter used to echo, and the youth center had cut my hours to fund a leaky roof. Bills piled like autumn leaves on my kitchenette table. Eviction notices peeking from the stack like accusatory eyes. I called Grandma that night, the phone booth on the corner reeking of urine and desperation, my quarters slick in my palm. The line rang 12 times before her voice, frail as tissue paper, answered. Evelyn Harper, residence. No recognition, just the formal lilt of a woman who'd long since shuttered her heart. It's me, Grandma. Riley. Silence stretched, taut as a bowstring. Then, what do you want, girl? The words landed like frost on bare skin. I poured it out, the loneliness, the hunger for her voice, the ache of loving women in a world that still whispered sin. I need to know you don't hate me. Her breath hitched, a rasp like dry leaves. Hate is a strong word, Riley. But the path you're on, it's not mine. Not your mama's. Find Jesus, child. That's all I got left to say. The click echoed in my skull as I slumped against the booth's glass. The city lights fracturing through tears, Portland's neon pulse mocking my fracture. Breakdown bloomed from there. A slow poison seeping into every corner. I quit the diner, unable to stomach the forced smiles, and took to wandering the city's underbelly, the shadowed alleys of Old Town, where the homeless huddled under bridges like forgotten prayers. I joined a support group at the center, a circle of folding chairs in a basement lit by a single bulb, voices sharing scars under the banner of queer and sober. There was Marco with his AIDS ribbon tattoo and tales of lost lovers. Lena, a trans woman whose laugh defied the world's cruelties. Their stories wrapped around me like kelp in the tide, but mine stuck, lodged behind my teeth. My grandma left me on the side of the road. I finally choked out one rainy Tuesday, the words tumbling like loose stones. The room held its breath, then exhaled in murmurs of "That's bullshit," and "You're here now." But inside the dam cracked wider. Nights turned to rituals of self-erasure. Bottles of cheap Merlot drained in the dark, the wine's warmth a poor substitute for arms that never came. I ghosted through classes, my essays half-finished elegies to lost kin. Professor Harlan's red pen circling "Dig deeper, Riley, your truth is buried here." Truth. It mocked me as I pawned Mama's locket, the one with the pressed violet from her garden, the only heirloom Grandma hadn't reclaimed, for rent money. The pawnbroker's eyes pitying and dull, as he slid $30 across the counter. That night I walked to the river, the Willamette's black surface rippling under sodium lamps, and hurled a stone into its depths, watching the concentric circles spread like the ripples of my confession years ago. What now? I whispered to the current, but it carried no answers, only the faint scent of brine and decay. A job found me through sheer stubbornness. A barista gig at a Pearl District cafe called Willow's Brew, where the air hummed with espresso and indie folk playlists. My boss, a wiry woman named Tate with a buzz cut and a penchant for herbal teas, saw the shadows under my eyes and slid me extra shifts without question. "You've got storyteller hands," she said one afternoon, watching me steam milk into heart shapes for a customer's latte. Storyteller. The word lingered, pulling me back to the youth center, where I started a writing circle for the kids. We gathered in the rec room, crayons and journals scattered like fallen stars, and I guided them through prompts. Write the letter you never sent. Their words flowed, raw, jagged gems of abuse and exile, and in sharing mine the floodgates creaked open. "Dear Grandma," I read, voice steady for the first time. "The road you left me on still echoes in my steps, but I've found rivers here that run deeper than your fears." Healing's first tentative shoots pushed through the rubble then, fragile as fern fronds after fire. Tate became a quiet anchor, inviting me to her potlucks where queer families gathered. Adoptive parents with gap-toothed toddlers, couples who'd weathered Stonewall's echoes. At one such evening, under strings of Edison bulbs in her backyard, I met Claire. She was across the lawn, laughing with a glass of Pinot in hand, her dark hair falling in waves to her shoulders, hazel eyes catching the light like polished oak. A librarian from the Central Branch, she wore a sundress patterned with bookshelves, her smile a beacon amid the chatter. Our eyes met over a plate of deviled eggs, and she crossed the grass, extending a hand. "Claire Whitaker, you look like someone who's read all the good ones but needs a recommendation for the next." Conversation unfurled like a well-worn novel, easy and layered. She spoke of Vermont roots, leaf-peeping drives through the Green Mountains, the crunch of snow under boots, and I shared fragments of the South, the fireflies that danced like living lanterns in summer fields. By night's end we exchanged numbers, her fingers brushing mine in a spark that lingered like ember glow. Texts followed. Book quotes at midnight, coffee invites under the cafe's awning. Claire was steady, not the blaze but the hearth, listening without judgment as I unpacked the roadside, her hand finding mine across the table, thumb tracing circles that soothed the scar. But the breakdown's undertow pulled hard. One evening after a shift where a customer sneered "dyke" under his breath, I spiraled home to my apartment, the walls closing in like a too-tight corset. Claire knocked an hour later, bearing takeout pho and a dog-eared copy of The Price of Salt. "You don't have to carry it alone," she said, settling on my threadbare couch, the steam from the broth curling between us like incense. I broke then, sobs racking me as I confessed the depths. The wine-soaked nights, the letters burned in a sink basin, the fear that Grandma's rejection had branded me unlovable. Claire held me, her embrace a harbor, whispering, "You're not broken, Riley. You're the road itself, winding, resilient, leading somewhere beautiful." In the weeks that followed, the fog lifted incrementally, sunlight slanting through blinds to gild the dust motes. Claire and I built rhythms. Weekend hikes in Forest Park, where Douglas firs whispered secrets to the canopy, her hand in mine as we crested ridges, the city sprawling below like a promise. She met the kids at the center, reading aloud from picture books of two-mom families, her voice a melody that coaxed smiles from the shyest faces. And I wrote, not letters but stories, submitting a piece to a local lit mag about a girl left by the roadside who finds her way via starlight and stubborn grace. Acceptance came via email, the editor's note reading, "This heals as it hurts. More please." Yet shadows lingered, tendrils of doubt curling at the edges. A phone call from a Bluffton cousin, Grandma's sciatica flaring, her hands trembling over needlepoint, stirred the embers of longing. "She asks about you sometimes, Riley." In her sleep. The words hung, a bridge half built over the chasm. Claire, sensing the pull, suggested therapy, a gentle nudge toward the counselor at the center, a soft-spoken woman named Mira with salt and pepper braids. Sessions became sanctuaries where I mapped the wound's contours. Learning forgiveness started not with Grandma, but with the girl on the gravel whispering, "You deserved better." As autumn deepened, leaves turning the streets to flame, I felt the breakdown's grip loosen, replaced by a quiet bloom. Claire and I stole kisses in the stacks of her library, her laughter a light chasing the dusk. One night, under a harvest moon that silvered the Willamette, she asked, "What if we made this real? You and me building something that lasts." My heart, once a roadside casualty, swelled with the possibility. A life not of erasure, but emergence, roots pushing through cracked earth toward an unseen sun. The meeting unfolded like a scene from one of those old Hollywood films Claire adored. Chance encounter laced with inevitability, the universe conspiring in whispers of wind and well-timed doors. It was a crisp October morning in Forest Park, the air crisp with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, when I first truly saw Lydia Voss. I had gone for a solo run, pounding the Wildwood Trail to shake off the residue of a nightmare. Grandma's Ford vanishing into fog, my cries swallowed by the pines. Claire was at a librarian's conference in Seattle, her absence a soft ache, and the trail's solitude was my confessor, roots and ferns bearing witness to my labored breaths. She was there at the witch's castle overlook, a crumbling stone ruin draped in ivy, sketching in a worn moleskine with charcoal that smudged her fingertips. Mid-30s perhaps, with sun-kissed skin and cropped blonde hair that caught the dappled light like wheat in a breeze. Her features were sharp yet softened, high cheekbones, full lips curved in concentration, eyes the color of storm-tossed seas. She wore hiking boots scuffed from miles, cargo pants and a flannel shirt rolled to her elbows, revealing forearms etched with faint scars, like maps of old adventures. American through and through, with a Montana lilt I would later learn, born in the shadow of Glacier National Park, where her family ran a guest ranch amid wildflower meadows and grizzly haunts. I slowed to a walk, drawn by the intensity of her focus, the way her hand danced across the page, capturing the ruin's Gothic arches against the autumn blaze. "That's beautiful," I said, unbidden, the words slipping out like an apology for intruding. She looked up, surprise flickering to warmth, and tilted the sketch toward me. The castle rendered not as decay, but as rebirth, vines weaving through stone like veins of green hope. "Thanks. It's all about seeing the life in the broken places." Her voice was low, resonant, carrying the drawl of wide-open skies. We talked then, easy as the trail's gentle descent. Her name Lydia, mine Riley. Shared loves of the outdoors, the way nature held space for secrets without judgment. She was a freelance illustrator, splitting time between Portland gigs and Montana summers, her work adorning book covers and indie posters with ethereal women entwined in forests, their gazes fierce and tender. "I draw what I wish I'd seen as a kid," she confessed, packing her pencils. "Women like us, unapologetic in the wild." They us hung a quiet acknowledgement, and my pulse quickened. Not with the spark of Claire's hearth, but something wilder, a gust that stirred dormant leaves. Claire returned that evening, her suitcase thumping in the hall, and I confessed over stir-fry in our shared apartment, now ours after 6 months of merged lives, her books mingling with my journals on every shelf. "Just a trail chat," I said, but the guilt twisted, a vine snaking through my ribs. Claire listened, her hazel eyes steady, and squeezed my hand. "Portland's full of beautiful souls, Riley. As long as you're here with me." Her trust was a gift, fragile as porcelain, and I vowed to honor it, burying the encounter like a seed in winter soil. But Lydia lingered, an echo in my sketches at the youth center, where the kids clamored for more nature witches. Weeks later, fate, or perhaps the city's labyrinthine paths, orchestrated a second meeting at Willow's Brew. I was behind the counter, frothing oat milk for a rush, when she slid into line, order pad in hand for a client pitch. "Double cappuccino, extra foam," she said, our eyes locking in recognition. "Trail runner, right? The one who likes ruins." Laughter bridged the awkwardness, and she lingered post-order, perched on a stool as the line ebbed, sharing tales of a Montana childhood. Riding horses at dawn, her mother's herbal remedies for scraped knees, the quiet coming out to a father who nodded once and said, "Be true, kid. That's all the ranch needs." Her stories wove into mine, threads of abandonment and reclamation. "My mom passed young," she said, stirring her cup. "Dad tried, but grief made him distant. I left for art school in Seattle, found my people there. Women who built bonfires on beaches and called it church. Envy stirred in me, sharp as pine needles, for her clean break, Her family softened by time rather than severed by doctrine. We exchanged Instagrams, hers a gallery of ethereal landscapes, mine candid shots of the kids' art, and parted with a casual "see you on the trails?" Claire noticed the glow I carried home, the way my steps lightened. "Good shift?" she asked, curled on the couch with a novel. I nodded, pulling her into a kiss that tasted of loyalty, but doubt's whisper had taken root. Therapy with Mira unpacked it. Attraction isn't betrayal, Riley. It's human. What does it tell you about what you need? What I needed, I realized, was permission to explore the wilder parts of myself. The runner's freedom, the artist's abandon, without Claire's steady rhythm feeling like a cage. We talked openly then, Claire's vulnerability a mirror to my own. Her fear of losing the hearth we'd built, my longing for gusts that carried me higher. Winter solstice brought the meeting to fruition, a group hike organized by the center, 20 souls trudging Multnomah Falls Trail under leaden skies. The Cascades roar a thunderous benediction. Lydia was there, volunteered to illustrate a fundraising booklet, her sketchpad slung over her shoulder. Claire hiked beside me, our breath sinking in the chill, but when the group paused at the bridge, mist veiling the gorge, Lydia and I gravitated, sharing a thermos of cider. "This place," she murmured, gesturing to the plummeting water. "It's like grief relentless but carving beauty from stone." I shared a sliver of the roadside, the words lighter now, and she touched my arm, brief as a butterfly's wing. "You're carved deep, Riley. That's strength." Claire saw, later by the fire pit at the trailhead, where marshmallows charred to sweet char. "She's magnetic," she admitted that night, as snow flurried past our window. "But we're us." The conversation stretched into dawn, boundaries redrawn with care. Friendship with Lydia, open-hearted but chaste, a way to honor the wild without wandering lost. Yet the meeting had shifted something, cracked the shell of my breakdown, allowing light to seep in slivers. Lydia became a trail companion, our runs weaving through the city's green veins, her presence a catalyst for confessions long damned. Spring thawed the ground and with it my resolve. Claire and I deepened, couples yoga in sun-dappled studios, picnics by the sandy river where her head rested on my lap, fingers toying with my curls. Lydia's illustrations graced the center's walls, her women fierce guardians, and in quiet moments, I wondered at the symmetry. 3 souls orbiting, each illuminating the other's shadows. One afternoon post-run, Lydia and I sat on a log overlooking the Columbia. The river's expanse a metaphor for expanse within. "I came out at 16, she shared, voice soft against the wind. "Dad hugged me, said love's like the ranch, fences for safety, but wide pastures for running." Envy softened to gratitude. Her story a lantern in my dusk. The Youth Center's annual showcase crystallized it. An evening of readings and art under bistro lights in the courtyard. Rain held at bay by sheer will. The kids performed, voices trembling then soaring, and I read from my emerging manuscript. A chapter on the roadside, reframed not as end, but as the first step on a 1,000-mile trail. Claire in the front row, eyes shining. Lydia capturing it in quick strokes, her gaze a quiet affirmation. Afterward, hugs and toasts, the air electric with possibility. Claire pulled me aside, whispering, "This is your meeting, Riley, with yourself." And in that throng amid laughter and lamplight, I felt the pieces align. Not perfect but whole, the wound's edges callousing into wisdom, ready for the next ascent. Understanding dawned not in a blaze, but in the incremental glow of fireflies. Those fleeting southern lights Grandma once chased with me in jars, their pulse a reminder that even in darkness luminescence persists. It was early summer now, the Portland air thick with rose blooms and the distant hum of the Rose Festival, when the letter arrived. Not from Grandma but from Cousin Harlan, yes, the same surname as my professor, a distant branch of the family oak, now a paralegal in Charleston with a penchant for genealogy apps. The envelope, cream stock with a wax seal like a relic, contained yellowed clippings and a note in looping script. "Riley, found these in Grandma Evelyn's attic while helping with the flood cleanup. She won't talk about you, but these, they speak. Come if you can. Love, Harlan." The clippings spilled like autumn harvest. A 1952 obit for Great-Aunt Beatrice, beloved sister gone too soon at 24. Her photo a sepia echo of Grandma's features, same high forehead, same guarded smile. Buried deeper a love letter fragment, ink faded but fervent. My dearest B, the nights without you are oceans without shore. Meet me by the oaks at midnight, your E. E for Evelyn. My breath caught, the pieces slotting with a click. Grandma at 18, loving a woman in the shadowed groves of post-war South Carolina, where McCarthy's whispers hunted deviants like hounds. Beatrice, lost to pneumonia or perhaps something unspoken. A fall from grace. The family lore hinted, hushed over sweet tea. Claire read it beside me on our balcony, the Willamette glittering below like a vein of mercury, her hand steady on my knee. This explains the fear, she murmured. She built walls from her own ruins. Lydia, over coffee the next day at Willow's, added her artist's lens. It's like those sketches, shadows defining the light. Your stories entwined with hers. Understanding bloomed there, in the cafe's steam and camaraderie, a forgiveness germinating not as erasure, but excavation, digging through the clay to unearth the girl Grandma had buried with Beatrice. I booked the flight on impulse, a red-eye to Savannah, Claire's kiss lingering at the gate like a talisman. Forgive for you, not her, she whispered. The South enveloped me upon landing, humid arms of live oaks, the tang of pluff mud and distant thunder. Harlan met me at the airport, a sturdy woman in her 40s with my curls tamed into a bob, her hug fierce as tidal pull. She's frilier now, Riley. The house is her fortress, but cracks are showing. We drove the low-country roads past Gullah sweetgrass baskets swaying in breezes to Bluffton. The same clabbered sentinel, paint peeling like old skin, azaleas rioting in the yard. Grandma answered the door after 3 knocks, her frame shrunken in a housecoat, silver hair pinned in a loose chignon, eyes widening then narrowing. Lord have mercy, it's you. No embrace, but she stepped aside, the kitchen unchanged. Same formica, same scent of cornbread ghosts. We sat at the table, Harlan mediating with iced tea and awkward silences, until I slid the clippings across. I know about Beatrice, Grandma. About you. Her cup trembled, liquid sloshing like unshed tears. Fool girl. That's ancient history. Sin wrapped in silk. Not sin, I countered, voice steady as the oaks outside. Love. The kind that reshapes you. Words poured then, my Portland life, Claire's warmth, the center's kids blooming under rain. Her gaze softened incrementally, fissures in the clay. After B. Your granddaddy courted me proper, gave me a name, a place. But the ache. It hollowed me. When you came out, I saw her in you. The fire, the fear of losing it all. Confession cracked her open. The roadside, not cruelty but terror. Fearing I'd drown in the same unspoken sea. Shamed by a world that branded them both. I thought exile would save you. Like it couldn't save her. Empathy flooded me. A tide eroding resentment's shores. I reached for her hand, veined and work-worn, the same that had braided my hair in childhood plaits. It didn't save me, Grandma, but it led me here to understanding. We both loved fiercely against the grain. Tears traced her wrinkles and she squeezed back, whisper faint. Forgive an old fool? The question hung fragile as Spanish moss. There's nothing to forgive, I lied gently, then amended. Or everything. But we're starting now. Harlan left us to the afternoon's hush, and we sifted memories like silt for gold. Beatrice's laugh like church bells, stolen kisses under harvest moons, the war's end scattering them like chaff. Grandma spoke of Mama's wild youth, echoes of my own, and the overdose as her own roadside abandonment. I failed her too, Riley. Poured prayer over pain, thinking it'd mend. Vulnerability wove us closer, threads of shared wounding. By dusk we walked the garden, fireflies igniting like delayed stars, her arm linked in mine. Portland suits you, she conceded. Send pictures. Of your life. Return to Oregon was bittersweet. The plains hum a lullaby over cloud seas. Claire met me with wildflowers and a home-cooked gumbo, her nod to southern roots, and we debriefed on the couch, her listening a grace. It's not absolution overnight, I said. But a door cracked. Lydia, over a trail run the next week, sketched the fireflies in my notebook margins, her voice thoughtful. Forgiveness is sketching over scars, letting the new lines show through. The trio's rhythm deepened. Group brunches where Claire's wit sparred with Lydia's dry Montana quips, hikes where understanding layered like sedimentary rock. Summer deepened the thaw. I invited Grandma to visit, Her refusal polite but laced with promise. Too old for planes, child. But you come back. Bring your stories. Letters resumed. Not burned but posted, filled with center triumphs and Claire's garden herbs thriving in pots. One arrived scented with lavender. "Bee would have liked your sketches." She drew horses fierce as the wind. Empathy extended outward. At the center, I facilitated a forgiveness workshop. Kids scripting letters to ghosts. Parents, pastors, releasing balloons inscribed with regrets over the river. Claire and I marked our anniversary with a drive to the coast. Cannon Beach's haystacks rising like ancient sentinels from the surf. Tide pools mirroring the sky's vastness. There, on a blanket strewn with wild strawberries, she proposed not with a ring but a vow. "Let's build the family you deserve, whatever shape it takes." Tears mingled with salt spray, and I nodded, the understanding crystallizing. Forgiveness wasn't reclaiming the past, but co-authoring the future. Lydia's role clarified too. A sister in spirit, her illustrations now collaborating with my writing for a zine on queer Southern exiles. One evening, as we pored over layouts in her studio loft overlooking the bridges, she paused, charcoal poised. "You've given me permission to draw my own ghosts, Riley." Montana winters, Dad's silence after Mom. Shared understanding bound us, platonic and profound, a constellation lighting the group dynamic. By fall's cusp, the visit came, Grandma, chauffeured by Harlan, stepping tentative onto Portland soil, her eyes wide at the evergreen's emerald hush. Claire charmed with elderflower cordial. Lydia sketched her portrait, capturing the oak's enduring bend. Over dinner, shrimp and grits reimagined with local prawns. Stories flowed, Beatrice's shadow softening to sister. "You remind me of her," Grandma told me, hand on mine. "But stronger. Rooted wider." The night ended with fireflies in jars. No mason lamps strung in the backyard. Their glow a bridge across years. Understanding, I learned, was the soil for forgiveness. Rich, loamy, fed by rain and refusal to wither. As leaves turned amber, I felt the journey pivot from wound to wisdom. The roadside now a waypoint, not an end. Rebirth stirred in the quiet alchemy of choice, the deliberate planting of seeds in soil once thought barren, watching them fracture the surface with green insistence. It was Claire's idea, born over coffee one fog-shrouded morning, her eyes alight with the mischief of creation. "A daughter, Riley. Our daughter. Let's make space for her in this life we've carved." The words landed like sunlight on snow, melting reservations into rivulets of yes. At 30, I was no longer the roadside waif, but a woman with roots in Portland's loam. Stories published in small presses, the center's writing program bearing my name, Claire's love a constant north. Lydia, our chosen kin, toasted the decision at brunch, her sketch of 3 women under a family tree already framed on our wall. The process unfolded like a novella in chapters. Consultations at a fertility clinic nestled in the hills, where doctors with kind charts explained IVF's map. Egg donors, carriers, the tender science of building bloodlines from chosen hearts. We opted for reciprocal IVF, Claire's eggs my womb, her body the origin, mine the harbor. "Our bridge," she called it, kissing my still flat belly during the hormone haze. Injections became rituals, Claire's steady hands prepping syringes under lamplight, her whispers of "you're magnificent" chasing the nausea. Lydia supplied care packages. Herbal teas for queasiness, illustrated journals for midnight musings, her presence a soft scaffold. Months blurred into ultrasound's grainy miracles. A heartbeat like Morse code promising connection. Grandma's letters arrived fortnightly now, her script steadier, laced with questions. "How's the little one?" Knitting booties, pink or blue don't matter, just warm. Understanding had paved this path. Her Beatrice confession a key unlocking maternal echoes, allowing her to envision a great-granddaughter without the specter of shame. I sent sonograms, pixels of potential, and her reply came swift. "She's got your curls already, I bet. Come south when she's born. The garden needs tending." Pregnancy reshaped me from the inside out, a slow unfurling like fern croziers in spring rain. Morning sick in Forest Park, Claire rubbing my back as I retched into bushes. Afternoons at the center, kids pressing ears to my swell, giggling at kicks like subterranean earthquakes. Lydia led prenatal art classes, our bellies, hers not yet but dreaming. mirroring in canvas strokes of cosmic mothers. Rebirth wasn't solitary. It rippled, touching Claire's quiet awe as she felt flutters under her palm, Lydia's illustrations evolving to cradles woven from vines and stars. Labor came on an equinox dawn. The world balanced on life's edge, contractions crashing like Willamette waves. Claire drove through Portland's awakening streets, Lydia trailing in her truck with go bags and playlists of ocean sounds. The birthing center hummed with midwifery calm, candles flickering, lavender diffusing the air, and I labored through the veil, Claire's hand an anchor, her voice a mantra. Breathe with me, love. She's coming home. Lydia waited in the hall, sketching the waiting room's potted ferns, her later confession. I felt it too, that pull like the earth remembering itself. Daisy arrived at 4:17 a.m. A squall of fury and wonder, 7 pounds of damp miracle with Claire's hazel eyes and my auburn fuzz. They placed her on my chest, skin to skin, her wail softening to a sigh, and in that instant rebirth crystallized. The roadside's abandonment transmuted to this fierce holding, my arms a circle unbroken. Claire wept, kissing Daisy's crown. Lydia entered then, her sketchpad forgotten, to trace a finger along the baby's cheek. She's the light we all carried, she said, voice thick. The early days were a haze of milk and moonlit feedings, our apartment a nest of burp cloths and lullabies. Claire took leave from the library, her stories now whispered to Daisy in cribside tales of bookish heroines. Lydia became Auntie Lyd, her Montana ranch a distant promise of summers with horses and wild huckleberries. I returned to the center part-time, Daisy in a sling against my heart, her coups punctuating workshops where kids marveled. Miss Riley, she's like a tiny warrior princess. One boy, echo of my 17-year-old self, wrote, Babies fix the broken roads inside. Grandma's package arrived a week postpartum. A quilt stitched from Mama's old dresses, patterns of wildflowers and waves, a note pinned, for the little sailor. Wrap her tight. Love travels in stitches. Tears soaked the fabric as I draped it over Daisy's bassinet. The threads a tapestry of forgiveness woven anew. Claire and I hosted a blessing circle, queer elders from the group, Mira the counselor, Tate with her herbal smudge, passing Daisy hand to hand under strings of paper cranes, vows exchanged like sacred ink, protection, joy, unyielding love. Rebirth extended beyond the hearth, pulsing into community veins. Lydia's illustrations landed a children's book deal. Tales of 2 moms and a girl who tamed forests, dedicated to Daisy, first bloom of our wild. We celebrated at a rooftop soiree, Portland's skyline a jagged crown, toasts raised to expansions. Claire and I eyeing a fixer-upper in the hills, room for Daisy's crib and Lydia's guest studio. Family's not blood, Lydia said, clinking glasses, but the roots we choose to entwine. Challenges threaded the joy. Sleepless nights fraying tempers, my body's reclaiming a battlefield of stretch and swell. Therapy evolved to family sessions, Mira guiding us through the newborn fog, unearthing old wounds in new guises. My fear of abandonment surfacing in clingy holds, Claire's Vermont reserve cracking under vulnerability's weight. We're rebirthing together, Mira affirmed, and we did date nights reclaimed with babysitters, hikes with Daisy in a carrier, her gurgles harmonizing with birdsong. Summer brought the pilgrimage south, a road trip etched in milestones. Daisy's first tooth at a Tennessee rest stop, Claire's playlist of folk anthems winding through Appalachia. Bluffton welcomed with magnolia shade. Grandma on the porch, cane in hand but eyes alight. She scooped Daisy with trembling arms, the quilt draped like a banner, cooing, my great-grand firecracker. Harlan grilled shrimp on the beach, stories unfurling around the fire pit. Beatrice's ghost a gentle specter now, invoked in toasts to loves that endure. You came back whole, Grandma whispered one twilight, rocking Daisy under fireflies. Holding her. It's like holding what I lost. The visit mended further, walks to Mama's grave, wildflowers placed in silent communion. Okra fritters shared with Lydia's video call interludes, her laughter bridging miles. Rebirth I saw was iterative, a phoenix not in single flame but constant ash to ember. Back in Portland, Daisy rolled over on a bed of fallen leaves, her grin a sunrise, and I journaled by lamplight. From gravel to grace, the journey circles home, not to the start but to the self remade. As autumn gilded the bridges, our life bloomed fuller. Playdates with center families, Claire's promotion to head storyteller, My manuscript agent. A novel of roadsides and rebirths. Lydia visited her own news a spark. A Montana partner. A ranch hand with calloused hands and quiet faith. Their love a western coda. We hiked as foursome. Daisy toddling between roots intertwining across terrains. In the hush of Daisy's nursery, nightlight casting stars on walls, I held Claire close, our breath sinking with the rain's patter. We did this, I murmured. From wound to wonder. Rebirth was an endpoint but horizon, ever receding, ever inviting. A light we carried forward one step, one heartbeat at a time. Light broke fully on a November morning, the kind Portland saves for redemption. Crisp air laced with wood smoke, sunlight slanting through bare branches like arrows of absolution. Daisy was 18 months now, a whirlwind of curls and curiosity, her first words a babble of mama, queer, and one, tugging at my jeans for trailside adventures. Claire and I had settled into the hillside cottage, its gingerbread trim a nod to fairy tales, Lydia's mural of entwined oaks adorning the nursery wall. Life had woven us into a tapestry of ordinary miracles. Daisy's pudgy fingers in pie dough, Claire's bedtime readings of Lydia's book, my novel's galleys stacking on the desk like promises kept. The return was Claire's gentle insistence, born over breakfast burritos, syrup sticky on Daisy's chin. She's ready, Riley. And so are you, to close the circle, not the book. Grandma's letters had evolved to weekly dispatches, garden updates, church quilt raffles, queries about Daisy's teething woes, with photos enclosed. Her porch swing, a new kitten named Bee. Understanding and forgiveness had tenderized the years, but light demanded presence, a physical bridging of the chasm. I booked tickets for 3, Lydia opting to house-sit with her partner Theo. Their recent engagement a parallel glow. Go shine, family. We'll keep the home fires. The flight south was a nursery rhyme of wonders. Daisy's nose pressed to the window at Cloud Mountains, Claire's hand in mine whispering, "This is our victory lap." Savannah's humidity folded around us like an old shawl. Harlan's SUV waiting at baggage claim, her grin wide as the harbor. Evelyn's baked a storm. Don't say I didn't warn you. The drive to Bluffton unspooled memories. Highway 17's familiar curve, now blooming with resurfaced asphalt and wild cosmos nodding in medians. No gravel ghosts here. The roadside had softened to sagebrush and acceptance. Grandma waited on the porch, straighter than memory allowed, a sprig of lavender tucked in her hair, cane hooked over the rail. My wandering stars, she breathed, arms open as Daisy barreled forward, a blur of overalls and glee. Evelyn scooped her up, laughter bubbling like a spring-long capped, the sight piercing me, generations entwined, the oak bending to cradle the sapling. Claire hung back, respectful, then stepped in for a hug that lingered, Evelyn murmuring, "You brought my girl home and more." Harlan's feast sprawled the table. Low-country boils steaming with shrimp and sausage, cornbread golden as sunset, the air coral with grace said hand in clasp. Stories unfurled over the meal, Daisy perched on Grandma's lap, gnawing a corn cob like a tiny philosopher. Evelyn shared Beatrice tales unvarnished now. Midnight picnics by the river, promises etched in sand, the pneumonia that stole her breath one fevered winter. "I thought love like that was a thief," she confessed, eyes on Daisy. "But seeing you, Riley, holding your own, it's a giver." I spoke of Portland's rivers, the center's lights, Lydia's art that captured souls in strokes. Claire added Vermont winters, her voice a bridge. "Love's the thread, Evelyn. Different weaves, same cloth." Afternoons wove intimacy. Garden rambles where Daisy chased fireflies, daytime cousins, butterflies errant in the camellias, Grandma's hand in mine, her voice a murmur of regrets recast. That roadside. My darkest hour. Feared you'd fade like bee, shamed into shadow. Forgiveness, full-flowered now, bloomed in response. It shadowed me, but lit the way too. To Claire, to Daisy, to you. We knelt at Mama's grave, Daisy's intentional, the flower named for our girl. Pressed to stone, tears watering the earth. "She'd be proud," Evelyn said, "of the woman you grew into, roots and wings both." Evenings held hearth magic. Porch swings creaking under star-pricked skies, Claire strumming guitar to folk tunes, Daisy's head lolling sleepy on my shoulder. Harlan regaled with family lore. Great-uncle's bootlegging yarns, auntie's suffrage marches. Reweaving the tapestry to include us, queer threads vibrant as the rest. One night, fireflies ignited the yard like living lanterns, and Evelyn fetched the old jars from the shed, their glass etched with childhood fingerprints. "Catch him gentle," she instructed Daisy, who clapped in delight as bioluminescent specks danced inside. "Let him go come morning, they need their light elsewhere." The metaphor hung unspoken. Our visit a captured glow, released to illuminate onward. Claire and I stole moments too. Dawn walks to the marsh, heron stalking shallows like ancient scribes, her whisper. "This homecoming. It's yours but ours." Light infused the ordinary. Daisy's first low-country drawl, Guanma, melting Evelyn to putty. A quilt along where Claire's precise stitches met Grandma's looser ones, patterns of rivers and roads. Lydia's care package arrived midweek, sketches of Bluffton Oaks, a note. Holding space from the pines. Love's light travels. Theo added a pressed huckleberry. For the next chapter. Departure loomed soft as tides ebb, the Ford repainted reliable. Packed for the airport run. Evelyn pressed envelopes into our hands. Letters for Daisy to open on birthdays, filled with grandma wisdoms. Recipes, riddles, remembrances of B as the auntie who flew with fireflies. At the gate, hugs stretched eternal. Daisy's chubby arms waving bye-bye love. Evelyn's eyes, once steel now sea glass. "Come back sooner, Riley. The road's kinder now." Claire's arm around me. Daisy's weight a warm anchor. We boarded into sunlight, the plane lifting like a prayer answered. Portland greeted with rain-kissed renewal. Lydia and Theo's welcome feast a bridge from south to northwest. Gumbo meets huckleberry pie. Life resumed its rhythm amplified. Daisy's babble echoing Evelyn's letters. My novel's launch party where Grandma's Roadside became prologue to triumph. Claire and I renewed vows in a backyard ceremony. Oaks drawn by Lydia. Fireflies in jars released at dusk. Daisy flower girl in a crown of daisies. Harlan officiating via video from the porch swing. Light, I learned, wasn't absence of shadow but its embrace. The way dusk deepens to reveal stars. Months later, a package from Bluffton. A tiny quilt square. Daisy's name embroidered with note. For her hope chest. "You're my rebirth, child." I hung it by the nursery window where morning sun gilds it gold. A beacon for the girl who once stood abandoned, now mother, lover, light bearer. In quiet evenings, Daisy on my hip, Claire's hand in mine, Lydia's laughter down the line, I trace the arc, from gravel wound to this luminous now. The journey circles, not to closure but continuum. Forgiveness a flame tended, love a river unending, rebirth the daily dawn of holding what we've claimed. And in that holding, daughter's breath soft against my neck, grandma's letters stacked like heirlooms. I find the truest home. Not a place but a persistent, warm glow whispering that after every roadside, the light always returns.